Now each of these jutting out areas needs a hole in it so that we can fix our leg to it. Now we could have drawn this in our original sketch so that it wasn't extruded through and there was just a gap left, but I wanted a chance to show you the hole tool because it's a really important feature to know about. What the hole tool does is it allows you to select a face and create a hole in that face of a certain size. There's a lot of different features you can use to create tapped holes, simple holes, or countable holes. In this case, we just want a simple one, and that's the default settings. But we want to make multiple, and with the normal at-point single hole selection placement, we can only create one. So what we want to use is a from sketch multiple holes option. Now this allows you to use sketch points as references to create holes on. And if you remember, the sketch that we had those points referenced already from the semicircle. But you might notice that it's disappeared. Now the reason for that is that when you've extruded your sketch, Fusion automatically presumes that you've used your sketch and you no longer need it, so it's hidden. If you remember, I talked about the little eye icon in the browser, and we can see within our base plate we have a sketches folder, and within that we have our original sketch that's hidden. If we click on the eye, you'll see it come back. It's just because Fusion thought we were done with it, but actually we want to use it again. And now what I can do is from multiple sketch points, I can select our 6 sketch points to put holes in. But again, you might notice nothing's happened, and the reason for that is that our arrow is facing down. What we want to do is, because we put our sketch on the bottom of our part, we actually want our hole to be upwards. And so what you can do is, in the extents, after distance there's this little icon called flip direction. If I click that, you'll see that my direction has flipped, and it's started to cut some holes. In Fusion, when you're cutting something, when something's being cut away, it represents it with a transparent red area. Now currently, my holes are really big. If you look at the diagram on the hole tool, there's a little area at the bottom which defines the diameter, and it's currently 34 millimeters. Now this can be based off a preset, it can be based off what you last typed in. Don't know why it's 34 for me, I don't know what it is for you. But you can change this to be 5 millimeters, which is how big we want each of our holes to be. You'll see now that these holes are cut out of our body, and they should cut all the way through. You'll also notice a cone on the top. That's a default setting, but you can change it here if you want, which is based on drill bits, so very useful. But it's 5 millimeters all the way through. Now it's automatically defaulted as 5 millimeters thick, but actually I'm just going to change this to show you another way you could do this. In the extents box, you can change this to the 2 option. What the 2 option does is it allows you to cut or join or create something up to a surface. In this case, I've selected 2, and now I'm selecting this top face, and you'll see that it automatically cuts our hole to that face, to that plane. It's changed it here to 2, and it's just a selection. You could do it either way, but it's good to know both ways. Once you're done with your holes, click OK, and you'll see that your holes appear in each of your parts. You'll also notice that in our timeline we have our sketch, we have our extrusion, and we have our holes. And what that means is that by using the hole tool, we can go back and change our holes individually without having to go in and changing our sketch, which makes it a really useful tool. I'm just going to hide our sketch again so that it's out of the way. Now that we've done this, we're going to make sure that we save. We're going to click save, and I'm going to say baseplate created. Click OK. You'll see a little tick appear at the top, hopefully, and it will change to be V2, which means that the hexboard assembly, it's the second version that we've saved. If you look in your data panel, you'll see that we're now on V2, and you'll see that I updated this 9 seconds ago by me, and I created it a little while ago. As you save, all your versions will continue. Something you might notice is on the right hand side here, you have the options to open and promote. What these do is it allows you to go back into your versions and take a look at what you did. So in this case, there's not much to see, but if I opened our created item, it would open that version at that time. and we could look at it. It would be locked, we wouldn't be able to edit it, but we could look at it. Secondly, you can promote, and what this does is it takes that version and it saves it as the newest version. It won't delete all the versions that you've done since, so if you do some work, you don't like it, and you want to revert back to an old version, it won't delete all the work you've done, so you can always revert to the revert, if that makes sense. But you can promote any version up to be the new version. A really useful tool if you want to go back and just go back to a version that you previously had. I just thought I'd show you that. Now the way that we're going to do this is we're going to use the Modify menu, and we're going to add in some fillets, and then we're also going to go in and change the material. So, first thing I said we're going to do is we're going to add in some fillets. So if we go into the Modify menu, you'll see second down is fillet. You can also press F on the keyboard, and this opens up this box. This will probably be the one that it defaults to. And we want to select the type as a normal fillet to start with. You'll see we have this weird clear table box, but what we want to do is we want to take away some of these sharp corners that we have on the outsides here and on the inside edges as well. So I'm going to start with these outside edges. I'm going to click on each one, and you'll notice that because we're using the fillet tool, Fusion recognizes that we're trying to select an edge. You can still select a face, but we want to select these edges, so you can go through materials and select them. Normally you can't just hover over something and select an edge unless you change your preferences, but there is a way, and I'll show you that in a little bit, that you can do those as well. We have our 6 edges selected for these outside corners. You can see it says 6 edges here, so that's right. And we can apply a fillet of, say, 5mm. I'd say that looks pretty good, but ultimately this is your design, so if you'd like to add a bigger fillet or a smaller fillet or not have a fillet at all, that's absolutely fine as long as you know how to use the tool. You can also drag the arrow to make the shape whatever you want it to be. I'm going to leave mine at 5mm. Now I also said we wanted to do these inside edges, and whilst I could continue to select it and add this up to, it would be 18, it would mean that all of our fillets would have to be the same size. Alternatively, I could theoretically add another fillet tool, so press OK here and add another fillet tool. The problem with that is, as soon as you start doing that too much and you add fillets to everything that you want different sizes, you end up with a lot of different fillet tools in your timeline. So a little tip that you can use is this Add Selection Set button. Now what this does is it adds a second line in your table when you click on something, and it makes it a separate edge selection, and you can use different settings and different radius sizes for that. So I'm going to go through and select all of these inside edges here. I talked just a minute ago about another way you can select an edge. Now, one really useful tool, we don't need it here necessarily, but if you're not in the fillet tool or you're just trying to select a body or something, what you can do is you can hover over the area that you want to select. So if your part is behind this body, then you can hold the left mouse button. You can let go once this appears, but you'll see that this dialog box appears with all the different options of what is there. So we have 2 faces and an edge. This allows you to select multiple different parts that are hidden behind. It's a really, really useful tool if you're trying to get to something without having to hide all the bodies and re-bring them back. In this case, we don't really need to. We can just select them because we're in the fillet tool. But it's a useful tool to know about, or a useful tip to know about. We should have 12. Good. And again, we can just drag our arrow. Now I think that 5mm looks a little bit small for these, so I'm going to make mine slightly bigger, but again, you can do whatever you want. It's your design. So I'm going to make mine 10mm. I think it looks quite good. I'm going to leave all of our other settings, but you can change other things, so if you want to, you can have a play around with them. And once you're done, you can press OK. Now, we also want to add a fillet to these top edges, because these are a little bit sharp as well. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a new fillet tool, and we're going to change the type to make it a rule fillet. Now what a rule fillet does is it allows you to select a face, and all of the edges associated to that face will get the same fillet that you've assigned. So in this case, I'm going to select this top face, and it's automatically given us a 1mm fillet. I think that 1mm looks pretty good, but you can go in and change it if you'd like to. I'm going to stick to mine with 1mm. Now you also want to assign the same to the bottom edge, to the bottom face. You'll notice that it won't let you select a second face. Now the reason for this is that because a fillet has already been generated in your preview, it doesn't allow you to select another one. It's a slightly weird part about Fusion, but it's something to be aware of, is that if you want to select something else, make this 0 so that nothing is being shown, nothing is being previewed, and you'll now be able to select your bottom face. Just be aware of that. That pops up in a couple of different tools. I'm not entirely sure why it happens, but it does, so just be aware of that. We can now go in, change this back to 1, and you'll see that it's applied to both faces. We now have nice smooth parts, so I'm going to press OK, and it's all looking pretty good. At this point, I'm going to press Save, and say, fillets added to base plate. Once it's saved, see it update to version 3. Now the next part I want to go in is I want to modify our material. Something to be aware of, a really useful tool, is the Properties tool. Now you can find this in your browser by right-clicking on certain parts. Now if you right-click on a component, you have loads of different options, and you can select physical material. But first, I want to know what our current material is. And there's a Properties option that allows you to do this. Now it's not in a component, because the component isn't what has the material. What has the actual physical 3D material is the body itself. So within your component, you'll see you have bodies and sketches, and your body is the actual 3D part of that entire component. So if we right click on body 1, you can see that the Properties option, and if we click on that, a menu box will appear with a load of different information about this specific body. We can see its area, its density, its mass, its volume as well, which can be really useful in certain situations, but also we have its physical material and its appearance. Now in Fusion 360, the physical material and the appearance are both preset as steel. That's the standard default setting. You can change this in your preferences up at the top, but that is what will be default, so I suspect it's what you have as well. We don't want our part to be steel. It's pretty heavy more than anything else and a little bit ugly, so I'm going to change this. As you saw, you could right click and select physical material. We could also go into the modify menu, and it's down at the bottom, say physical material. And if you click on this pop-up menu will appear with a long list of materials. Up at the top, you have what's currently in the design. So in this case, I could have seen that our part is steel, because this is the only part in steel is what's assigned. But if you have loads of components in a single file and you want to know what's going on, the properties menu can be really helpful. You have a bunch of different libraries. You normally stick to the Fusion 360 material library, but you can add things in. And we want to go in and select a certain material. I'm going to go into plastic, and I'm going to select ABS plastic as my material. It's lightweight, it's easy to manufacture, and it's fairly readily available. So I'm going to click and drag, and you can drag it onto your part. You'll see that ABS appears in our top section, and that it's now turned white to match the ABS that we have. Once it's done, you can close this, and you can go back into your properties menu, and we can see that our mass is now way below what it was. Before it was about a kilogram, just over a kilogram, and this is only 137 grams. So we've really saved some weight there. You'll also notice that our material has changed to ABS plastic, and our appearance has also automatically changed. Now you can go in and alter appearances separate from their physical material, and we're going to go through this a little bit later when we go into rendering. Just another point that I want to bring up about the properties menu is that whilst it's a very useful tool for modeling, to be able to look at what's going on, and maybe if you're designing, to know the weight or the volume of something is very useful, it's also very important to know about for if you're going to take an exam in Fusion 360, specifically the Autodesk Certified User Exam, which hopefully a lot of you will be working towards, is a certification that you can get from Autodesk, and it uses this box a lot, because as you're being tested, you go through and you use the software, and it uses stuff like the mass to determine whether you've got a part correct. So for example, the question could say, add a 5mm fillet to these 6 edges, and it would give you the part, and then you change that, and then it would ask you for the mass having done that, because obviously adding the fillet adds a little bit of material, so to 3 decimal places, your grams are going to go up slightly, and then you put that mass in as the answer. So it's a really imperative piece of knowledge to know how to access the properties menu Again, I'll just go through it again. Right click on the body. You'll see if you click on it as normally, it'll highlight. And if you right click on it, you get properties. Really important to know the mass and the volume and how you can get them for those exams. Just a little tip.